Right, so this is the last part of the video. So it's paper 1, the higher 2020 paper. Right, so in this question, we're going to be making F the subject. So you can see here that there is F's, there's 2 of them. So the first thing I'm going to do here is expand that bracket. So if I expand this bracket, I'm going to be left with D equals, and then 3 minus 3F, all over, and then F minus 4. So what I'm going to do now is I want to get rid of that fraction. So I'm going to times both sides by F minus 4. So here I'm going to put this in a bracket, just so you remember, you have to multiply D by both the F and the 4. So you'll be left with DF minus 4D, and that is going to equal 3 minus 3F. So now what I'm going to do is I want to put the F's to one side because I'm making F the subject, and then I'm going to bring the 4D to the right because I don't want that with the F's. So I'll be left with DF and then plus 3F. That's going to equal 3 plus 4D. Okay, so I've moved some things around. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make factorize because I'm trying to make F the subject. So inside the bracket will be D plus 3 equals 3 plus 4D. So the last step is then, because this means multiply, I'm going to divide both sides by D plus 3. So F is going to equal 3 over 4D, 3 plus 4D over D plus 3. And that is the answer. Okay, right, what we're going to do now then is the next question, which is a proportional question. So this question says X is proportional to the root of Y. So X is proportional to the root of Y. So remember, K is what we would be trying to find usually. But this question says Y is greater than 0. If we increase Y by 44%, what would happen to the X value? So Y, which is under here, if we increase that by 44%, which means 144 of what it originally is, which is 1.44. So if it increased by 44%, what would happen? Well, I know that I can actually square root 1.44, and we'll leave Y underneath that square root. So that's going to be 1.2 and then root Y. So this becomes X equals 1.2 root Y. So you can see here the 0.2 is referring to 20%. So it's going to be an increase by 20%. So the X value will increase by 20% because X would equal 1.2 X, no it won't, K root Y. So it's 20%. Right, the next one, we have some function questions. So we have the function of F and the function of G. The first question wants me to put 5 in the function of G. So I'm going to have G, and then inside I'm going to have 5. So that means I'm going to have to replace the X with 5, sorry. So we're going to have 2 times 5, which is 10. 10 plus 1, which is 11. So my answer is 33. So that's the first question. Right, the second one wants me to put the value, the function of 9 into F, and then put that into G. So I'm going to start by doing 9 first. So X becomes 9. So 12, the square root of 9 is 3. So the answer is going to be 4. So now it wants me to put 4 into G. So let's do that. So we're going to have 3 and then 2 times 4 plus 1. So 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1. So 3 times 9, and the answer is 27. So that's the answer for the second part. Right, the last question says the inverse. It wants to know, find when the inverse is 6. So it wants me to put 6 into the inverse. So basically, it's telling me what happens if the answer, usually I would say, okay, the inverse, which is Y, would equal 3 2x plus 1. I would make you switch these around and find the inverse function. But this time, instead of doing that, just because it's told me that it's going to be 6, it wants me to find out what would x be if it equals 6 instead. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. I'm going to zoom it in so I can write better. So we're going to have 2 equals 2x plus 1 minus 1 from both sides, and we have 1 equals 2x. Divide both sides by 2, so that means x equals a half. So that is that question. Right, the next one, we've got some surds, and it wants me to show how I can write this like this. So the first thing I notice here is the root 180 is quite large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split that up. Always try and find the biggest square root, okay? If you can't find the biggest square root, then find different numbers. So for example, I know that this is root 18 and this is root 10. So then I'm going to break them down a bit more. So this is root 9 times root 2 times root 2 times root 5. Okay, it helps me simplify that a little bit more. So if I'm multiplying all these together, I know that the root of 9 is 3. Root 2 times root 2 will give you 2. And then root 5. So my answer is 6 root 5. So I can rewrite this then. And instead of having root 180, that can be 6 root 5 instead. Okay, so now I can simplify the numerator. Because 6 root 5 minus 2 root 5, you're going to be left with 4 root 5 as the numerator, and then the denominator is as you see it. Right, so what we do then, we don't want any roots on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 5 root 5 plus 5, because that's going to help me eliminate the roots when I'm going to expand them. Okay, so what I'm going to have is, I'm going to do it over here. 4 times 5, so I'm doing the top, is 20. And then root 5 times root 5 is going to give me 5. And then I'm going to add 4 times 5 is 20. And then that's just root 5, there's no roots. And then on the bottom, if I expand here, I'm going to have 5 times 5 is 25. And root 5 times root 5 is 5. Then I'm going to have times that by 5 and have plus 25 root 5. Do the same with the negative, so minus the negative, so you can see how they're going to eventually cancel. And then negative 5 times a positive 5 is negative 25. So these cancel. And then 25 times, so now I can simplify it. Sorry. So 20 times 5 is 100 on the top. And then 25 times 5 minus 25 is 100. So now I'm going to simplify that fraction and I'm nearly there. So 100 divided by 100 is 1. And then 20 divided by 100, if we simplify it, is 1 over 5. So I don't need to write the 1 here where it's 20. I can just write root 5 over 5. So A is 1 and B is 5. Right, the next question is, we're nearly there, is a vector question. So first thing I'm going to do is, it's telling me that P is the midpoint of F to D, Q is the midpoint of D to E, and it's giving me some vectors. So I'm going to fill them in. So if we have some midpoints, so F to D is A, so that means this is going to be a half A, and this is a half A. Then it tells me that F to E is B, and then it tells me that Q is the midpoint of D to E. So first, I'm going to write D to E as a vector. Well, I'm going to go backwards on myself, so that's negative A, and then plus B. So that means this is going to be negative a half A plus a half B. Same here, negative a half A plus B. So the question wants me to prove that P to Q, so here, is parallel with F to E. So I've got to show they're parallel. So I need to work out, okay, how do I go from P to Q? So if I'm here, how do I go to here? Well, I can do P to D and then add D to Q. So I know that P to D, if I put the A in, is a half A. And I know that D to Q is negative a half A plus a half B. So then look here, if you simplify, a half A plus negative a half A, that changes to a negative, that they're going to cancel out. So my answer here is going to be a half B. So if I have to prove that they are parallel, I know that P to Q, which we've just worked out, is a half B. If you look at F to E, which is B, you can see that I can say, okay, well, actually, because it is B, that is a half of F to E. So we have proven that they are parallel. Right, nearly there, got 2 questions left. Right, the next question, ooh, big question. So it says we've got a diagram, we've got A and we've got B. So shape A is formed by removing a sector of the circle with the radius of 3x minus 1 from a sector of the circle that is altogether, if you add these two together, so from here to here, would be 5x minus 1. Then it tells you that the diameter of the second circle is 2 minus 2x. It says the area of shape A, which is only the shaded section, is equal to the area of shape B. We have to find the value of x. So what I'm going to do first is, it's nice and easy, I'm going to write it the area. So we know that the area of a circle is pi r squared. Okay, so obviously it's a non-calculated, so I'm going to leave pi in the answer and hopefully it might cancel out somewhere. So for the first shape, I need to know what both shapes. For the first shape, the radius is half the diameter, so it's 1 minus x. So the radius of the second shape, it's a little bit complicated. I have to take away the area of the big section. I have to take away that smaller section to work out what the area is. Okay, so let's start with shape A, the first shape. So A, so the large section is going to be the angle 45 over 360, because it's not the whole circle, and I need to times that by the radius, which I know is 5x minus 1 squared, and I need to take away the smaller section, which is 45 over 360, missing the pi there, sorry, times by the radius of the smaller one, which is 3x minus 1 squared, and then there's the pi. Okay, so that's the first one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to expand, simplify, see what I get. Right, I'm going to leave for now, let's simplify. So 45 divided by 360 is an eighth. So I'm going to write 1 over 8. Then I'm going to expand the 5x minus 1, 5x minus 1, and then pi. I'm going to subtract 1 over 8, and then we're going to have 3x minus 1, 3x minus 1, and then pi. Okay, so if I expand, I have an eighth, and then inside I have 25x minus 10x plus 1 pi, and then minus an eighth, and then we're going to have 9x squared minus 6x, and then plus 1 pi. Okay, so then I can, for now I'm going to leave it like that, okay, and I know this is going to equal the area of B, which in this case, pi r squared, we're going to have 1 minus x, 1 minus x, and times by pi. So if I expand it, I'm going to have 1 times 1 is 1, minus 2x, and then x times x is plus x squared. So these two things are going to equal each other. So what I'm going to do is, if I try and write it in, minus 10x plus 1 pi minus 1 over 8, 9x squared minus 6x plus 1 pi, that has to equal 1 minus 2x plus x squared. Fitted on. Right, so because I want to get rid of that 8, I'm going to times everything by 8. Oh, and I've missed that pi at the end, sorry, pi. And I'm also going to get rid of the pi, so I'm going to also divide by pi. Can cancel all that out, makes it a bit neater. So I'm going to be left with 25x minus squared. I keep missing that squared out, don't I? Plus 1. Take away 9x squared minus 6x plus 1. So the pi's have now cancelled. So cancel, cancel, cancel. And that is going to equal, and because I'm timesing this by 8, this side, I'm going to be left with 8 minus 16x plus 8x squared. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and solve it. So I want to make it equal 0. So 25x squared minus 9x squared is going to give me 16x squared. Negative 10 minus 6, so two negatives make a positive, so it's going to be plus 6. So that's going to be minus 4x. And then 1 minus 1 is going to be 0. And that equals 8 minus 16x plus 8x squared. Right, now I want to make it equal 0, so I'm going to subtract 8, add 16x, and minus x squared. So I'm going to be left with, on the opposite side, 8x squared. If I add 16, I'm going to be left with plus 12x, minus 8 is 0. So now what I'm going to do is factorise. So let's divide everything by 2, makes it, or 4, makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to have 2x squared plus 3x minus 2 is 0. So two numbers that times to make, so 2 times 2 is negative 4. But when you add them together, we are going to get 3. So if I do that, I'm going to have 4 and negative 1. So I can rewrite that as 2 plus 4x minus x minus 2 is 0. That's squared. So 2x inside the bracket is x plus 2. Then I'm going to have minus 1, x plus 2. So my two answers are x plus 2 or 2x minus 1 equals 0. Well, it can't be negative. So when I'm solving this, it can only be this one, because 2x minus 1 equals 0. That means x is going to equal a half. Not the neatest question, I apologise. Right, last question. There are 4 types of cards in a game. Each card has either a black circle or a white circle, a black triangle or a white triangle. So it gave us some ratios, so black shapes to white shapes and then circles to triangles. So we have to express the total number of black shapes as a fraction of the total number of triangles. So first, if we look at the ratios, we've got 3 to 5, 2 to 7. So first, let's write them as equivalent ones. So because this has got 8 parts, and this is 9 parts, I'm going to times the first fraction by 9 and the second fraction by 8. So we've got black shapes to white shapes, which was 3 to 5, but if I times it by 9, is now 27 to 45. Then the second one, which is circles to triangles, that was 2 to 7, but now I'm going to times it by 8, which is 16 to 56. So the question wants me to write as a fraction, now that we've times them. So if I added them both together, they would equal the same thing, which is what? It is 72. So they both equal now 72 parts. So they're out of the same number of cards, even though we don't know how many cards are in, both of the ratios have an equivalent number of parts. So express the total number of cards of the black shapes, which we wrote as 27, as a fraction of the total number of triangles, which we know is 56. So we know here, I'm going to write, well, there's 27 black cards and there's 56 triangles. And that is that first paper complete.